Hi, I'm Helen, and welcome to the K-Edit, where we decode K-beauty through culture, context, and strategy, with perspective before promotion. Today, we're here with Sarah to discuss one of the hottest topics in K-beauty today. Are K-beauty brands building products, or are they building brands?
Hi, Helen. We've been talking about it so many times, right? K-beauty brands are getting so much attention, global momentum for now, for sure. And they're launching all these great ingredients, great products, new brands, and it's very speedy. Like, we all know that Korean brands are super fast. But do you think this speed will translate the brands into long-term brand value?
So I was in New York for 10 years, and I was in beauty companies like L'Oreal, Shiseido, Coty, Estée Lauder. I was one of the youngest director at Estée Lauder back in 2018. So I'm a traditionally trained cosmetic person, expert. And I moved back to Korea maybe 2 years ago, and that's when like the start of the rise of K-beauty began.
Why do you think these K-beauty brands are doing so well these days?
You know, one of the biggest things is speed. If Sika's trending, they move. If PDRN is trending, they move. Like everything is just so fast. You want it, you get it. And another thing is the accessibility. So the distribution channels are as optimized as it can get. It's so easy to buy any type of K-beauty product these days, online or offline. And the packaging is colorful, it's fun, it's something different. And I think it's that little hit of dopamine that like everybody is looking for at an affordable price. So why wouldn't you be obsessed?
But then where do you think the biggest gap is then?
K-beauty is mostly a distribution business, more than a traditional cosmetic business. Because a lot of the things that I was trained that were important in a cosmetic brand were not necessarily the case inside K-beauty. However, the thing about K-beauty that from my experience was that it's a little bit of a hit or miss. So some products I buy, they're hits. Some products I buy, they're misses. And over time, because everyone online they're just promoting products and they're just advertising, I don't know who to trust anymore because I've gone through this experience of hit or miss. I don't really want to go through that trial and error anymore.
I mean, I have longer experience in Korea compared to you. But then brands these days in Korea, they're coming out with great innovation. Product innovation, ingredient innovation is like super number one. But then people don't really remember the brand behind it. They don't know which brand it is. Mm-hmm. So I felt the gap between the product and brand. So I cannot agree with you more on that one.
I think it's a cultural thing too, because I lived exactly 50% in Korea and 50% in New York or America. And so I'm in a little bit of a unique perspective where I'm fully Korean and I'm fully American as well. And when I see the two cultures, the difference is that a lot of the business in Korea, they operate by numbers. So it's very input, output, X equals Y. And in the States where I worked, over a decade, it doesn't really operate that way. It's about building meaning, building brands, building relationships, and really looking at the long-term goals. So, the speed when it comes to products can be an advantage, right? But the speed when it comes to building company is not necessarily an advantage because you need time and you need to invest in the growth in order for a brand to become of depth. Because everything here is about speed, it can get you the fastest innovations to you now. But in the future, is that really going to translate when everybody's moving just super fast?
But then what I notice is number of today, now. We need to make money now.
Yeah. So K-beauty brands are typically building products and launching products, but they're not building brands.
You've been talking about product versus brand, right? Let's talk about brand value and brand equity. In your term, how would you simply put brand equity?
Brand equity usually consists of 4 pillars. Mm-hmm. Awareness. Are people aware of your brand? Perception. What do people think about your brand? Loyalty. Do people come back to your brand? And financial performance. How well is your brand performing in the market? I think K-beauty brands really excel in the awareness and financial performance. However, they really lack in the perception and loyalty department. And the thing with these brand pillars is that if one of the link is weak, it usually compromises the brand in the long run.
So in order for a brand to invest in great branding, then this investment doesn't translate into today's sales, right?
Right.
So it's really a long-term investment. But I really haven't seen that many CEOs of K-beauty brand invest in the branding and building it and making the relationship in the long term with long-term viewers.
For sure.
So do you think the brand CEOs doesn't know this, or they know it, but then they're not really doing anything about it for now?
I think there's lack of awareness and education. I think once brand CEOs understand how important these fundamental pillars are in a business, I think it's hard to ignore. And because K-beauty brand, hype it just began like a couple years ago, and they're just launching in the States, like Olive Young is just launching. And dealing with the US consumers, I think more and more they will come to that realization.
What do you think the biggest difference of this global brand are doing differently?
From my experience, these global brands are not focused on only selling products. Having a great product is just the baseline. Global brands really put a lot of resources and time into building the relationship and the meaning for the consumers. So when we think of Estée Lauder, we think of elegance, we think of heritage. When we think of Nike, we don't just think the products, we think performance and motivation. And when we think of Apple, although there's iPhones, it's really selling much more than that, right? Apple is selling creativity, quality, and a lifestyle. So thinking about how global brands approach their consumers, they're not just making and selling products, they're really providing some sort of meaning to the consumer. And that's one of the things that I think K-beauty brands are lacking.
But then there are potential, right?
Because they have the speed and optimization and the distribution channels pretty down tightly. I think if it adds depth to it, then those brands can really grow long term and have a really significant portion in the market.
You are absolutely right, and I do agree with you. To me, it's more like Psy coming up with the one-hit wonder with Gangnam Style, but then he disappeared, right, in global scene. But BTS, Blackpink, there's like huge global fandom. So for a brand, I think it's the same. What do you think?
I agree. And I think the market is so saturated. I think consumers are overloaded with information and products all the time. The brands that really will survive long term are the ones that really appreciate and value and prioritize the consumer experience in the long run.
Okay, so we covered so many points today. They're all very important and valid. So the real challenge for K-beauty brand now is to make the emotional connection with the consumers for the brand loyalty. Let's see your final conclusion on that.
So at the end of the day, cosmetic is a human-to-human business. Fragrance, hair, makeup, they're all connected to emotion and sense of self-expression. So I think the messaging of who makes what products for and why will eventually reach the consumer. And when it does, I hope it strengthens the bond and not weakens it.
Yep. I think we covered the most aspects of the long-term brand value building. And I really hope that these K-beauty brands will continue its momentum by building long-term brand relationship with consumers and ultimately brand loyalty.
Yep, I agree with you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for speaking with me today. Thank you for watching the K Edit. We'll see you next time.